this computer. Welcome back to another conversation about dynamic leadership. So we've covered a few different topics. We do generally talk about the behaviours and the opportunities for people to do things that are a little bit different from what they're doing ordinarily to help them to become dynamic leaders over time. So today's conversation, we are back with my sisters, Narelle and Punky, and we are continuing to talk about different leadership topics. And so the topic that we're talking about today is succession planning. So thank you, Narelle and Punky, for joining me again.
Hi, Shelby.
Oh, gosh, I get Shelby, don't I?
Christabel and Shelby.
So let's get straight into it. You know, succession planning generally is an afterthought in the leadership space for a lot of people. You know, they don't think about, gosh, what will happen if I'm not in this role any longer, or who can do what I do. And we often take too much control and like to keep the things that we're responsible for close to our chest. So I guess I want to kick off the conversation by asking, you know, what are the risks of not having someone that can fill in for you when you're not around? Now, Punky, you've been out of the workplace for a little bit recently with an operation, and you're back. And I actually don't think you took too much time off. But, you know, did you think about succession planning before you were out of the workplace?
So the shoulder surgery that I had, it was supposed to be just a few days off work. So I did think worst case a little bit, but for the most part, it was fairly obvious. It was just going to be a simple operation that turned into a 6-week recovery that I'm 5 weeks into. However, I was confident enough with the team that I have at the moment and the training that I've done since I started at the company I'm with, that if anything was to happen, that they could step in quite easily. And I knew that even if I was out of not being able to do my usual duties in terms of on the computer and stuff, I could still verbally communicate with the Dictate app that you told me about, which is fantastic. So I went back to work 4 days later, and I was just using my left hand at that point in time, but I was just using an app to convert everything. And you know what? I don't think I actually really missed a beat. However, if it had been a significant injury and I couldn't communicate, if I didn't have the team that I had, I would have been in a fair bit of trouble, and it would have been playing on my mind quite a bit, impeding my recovery, I would imagine.
So what are some of the things that you did or what are some of the strategies that you have with your team to empower them to step into your position or take on some of your work when you're not around?
So when I first started there, there was quite a bit of job sharing in between the different areas. And so on some of the shifts, they would just cover each other's work, even though they were working in different areas. So I found that a person could take a week off and they didn't need to be covered, which I thought was really weird. And I said, if that's the case, you're either not doing enough or you're justifying that we only really need one person in this position. And they said, well, there's heaps more that we could be doing, but there's no one trained to do our work. So I arranged for everyone to have a backup assistant in every circumstance. Now, initially, they saw it as a threat and they thought, are you trying to replace us? What's the purpose of doing this? And I said, well, when you take sick leave or annual leave, what are you thinking when you're away? Are you completely disengaged and switched off from work and you're just focusing on your holiday or the time with your family? And they said, no, we're constantly getting phone calls and helping out where we can and not switching off because we're constantly thinking, there's such and such done what I asked her to do and all the rest of it. So I took it from a point of, this is actually designed to help you, not me. At the end of the day, I can do your job and I can step up and get things done. This is just so that you have peace of mind when you go on holidays. And after I explained it like that, everyone embraced the whole concept. And now they have backup QAs, and the QAs are even helping them out on a day when they're not away, just so they can learn more, just so that we've got more trained staff. And that is kind of my succession plan in that respect, but I don't think they know that.
So just empowering them to take on additional things, to have a backup, to not hold too tightly onto their own role or in their own space, actually then develops or delivers this mindset of, well, I can take on more and I can step across to different things when I need to.
I think it actually, yeah, that's exactly right. And it boosts the morale and it increases the engagement of the team as well. So I think that if they realize that, I can step up into a higher position, they will get a bit more excited about it, and they'll give it a bit more than what they previously did. There's people that have been in the roles for 20 and 30 years, and previous managers have basically not empowered them to go any further than what they already are. So they think that that's where their limitations end. And I've actually just shown them that you can go as far as you want. You don't have to stay here. You can go to any of our sites within the country and work your way up the company ladder. And that's been a really big driver, I guess, for the whole learning different roles and things like that.
What a great way to empower people and really, build their confidence in their own abilities and give them, open up possibility for them. It's great.
Yeah.
Narelle, what about you in your role? How do you kind of approach that, succession planning and growing your team?
Yeah, so I look after the succession process for the business as well. And so I need to be able to demonstrate that I can do it, because I need to actually role model what we do in our organization. So I think the approach that I take is succession planning is a long-term process in a short-term world. So you don't think about succession planning when you need it, you start to build it up over a period of time. And so when I first went into the role, which was almost 3 years ago now, when I was recruiting and setting up my team, the key factors that I looked at is who can step up into a bigger role, so that every role that I was recruiting for into my senior leadership team had the potential to be able to step up into a bigger role at that time. And so they're smarter than me, they're better than me, they know more than me, they've got great skill sets. And so, bringing them in and giving them the opportunity to learn and grow as I learn and grow, gives them an opportunity to step up as well. So what we've been doing is, over the last few years, is giving them ownership of key strategic projects. So if I think about my team, things like how we go about supporting people's learning, how we go about supporting performance, each one of my leaders has a portfolio that they look after, which they're responsible for. So the thinking, the strategy, the development. And if you line that up across my leadership team, I've got a whole range of leaders that are pushing up because they've been managing those, they've been supporting them, they've been learning, and they've been growing. The really important part of that is everyone else that reports into them has also had an opportunity to step up as they continue to learn and grow. So I think for my team, it's been that you don't develop these skills over time. They're complex roles. You need to plan to do that. When you get the opportunity to bring people in, you need to provide that space. And if you're bringing really smart, capable people in, you need to give them the space to grow, which means letting go of stuff. So I've let go of stuff, and that's been over a period of a number of years. So that's sort of at that leadership team level. And then I think the second thing that we've done is trying to avoid, so I work in a center of expertise, which we have a lot of expert people in spaces. And what we've tried to do is to build the capability of everyone across the team. So rather than having one expert that knows everything, so if I take someone who knows how to design an organization, for example, if I've got one person and anything happens, that's a real risk. And so we brought someone in with that skill set earlier this year. And during the year, we've been getting everyone up to a base level, and then we'll get them to another level next year. So helping people to not only have their area of expertise, but also to learn and grow and work on projects that cut across the team. So I think, as leaders, who are you bringing in? How are you developing them? What opportunity are you giving? And then for your team members, giving them projects to stretch and see what they can do and learn new stuff.
Amazing. And do you see that the risk reduces with, when people become a little bit more open to working across the function and learning a little bit more, even getting base level knowledge, actually just brings them, it not only reduces risk, but it helps bring people together because there's a better understanding of what people do. And I think breaks down silos instead of having this is my role, this is what I do, without that thinking about what's the impact across the broader business, that you've got people that go, oh no, I actually understand a little bit more about that because I'm exposed to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think it does a few things. So if you empower them, people really surprise you at times. Like, so if I think about the team this year versus last year, and particularly during COVID, and we've asked them to, we call it pivot and shift, right? We're off, we're running, let's get stuff done. Right, we're on the next thing, let's get stuff done. Who can do it? And we wouldn't have been able to do that unless we'd started to create a mindset of, we trust you. We've brought you in for your expertise. You can absolutely learn new stuff and we will support you. But it helps people to stretch outside their comfort zone in a really safe environment and to learn new stuff when it's not absolutely business critical. So you're helping to get it in place before you desperately need it.
Great. Do you see that a bit as well, Punky?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said before, initially they weren't as accommodating to the overall plan as what I was. But once they realised that, like Narelle said, giving people new jobs to do that they haven't done before, new tasks, it does empower them a lot more. And they do see the benefits of stepping outside of where they are. And I think to a certain extent, a lot of people are threatened that if someone else comes in, they're going to take their position. But if you're performing your role, there's absolutely no way that someone's going to get rid of you. It's just multi-skilling everyone to the same level.
Yeah, I think the scarcity component, and particularly if someone's been in their role for 20 years or even over a 5-year period, that you can start to hold on quite tightly to what you've got and worry about the risk of leaving. I think your comfort zone can tend to shrink and you become a little bit worried about whether you've got the potential to do things. And so what I'm hearing with the approach of let's all learn a little bit more about each other should in essence reduce how scared people are of being replaced or being made redundant or becoming irrelevant, because they're constantly broadening their skills.
And I would say in this environment, skills, the life expectancy of skills is a lot shorter than it used to be. And so helping people to actually learn stuff, I think as managers, you've got a responsibility to do that, because things are becoming automated, technology is taking over stuff. And so helping them to learn new stuff also helps to future protect them with their careers as well, so that they don't stay still, because the outside world keeps moving, whether they're moving inside in their company or not.
Yeah, succession planning is learning to learn, essentially. And the more people you have learning to learn and then learning along the way, the better equipped you are and the better established. Now, there's a number of instances in the past where I've observed, and I think I've even done this myself in the past, is I've picked one person and I've gone, you're the one that's going to replace me. But I haven't told them because, I'm a little bit worried about not being able to follow through on my promises. So I've got it in my head that they're the one that's going to come and step in. And so I'm exposing them to all these opportunities and I'm inviting them to meetings and I'm asking them to kind of step in for me on occasion. And then I find another opportunity and I'm good to go, and I let them know and they tell me that they've found another role and they leave just before I am ready to move on. And then, proverbial shit hits the fan and then I'm backtracking. So is that something that you've experienced?
I'm smiling because I did take some notes, and this is one of the things that I wrote down. I said, don't make the age-old mistake of picking someone and having them earmarked and saying, that's our guy. And as I did at a previous role, had discussions with the ops manager and said, yep, she's the one that's stepping up. Amazing. This is going to solve all our problems. And she's such a hard worker, gets everything done. You never have to ask her to do anything. And then we're just about ready to tell her. And a month later comes in and says, I'm sick of the early starts and the hard work. And I don't feel like I've been appreciated or rewarded. And I've got another job. See you later. I think it's good to have a succession plan, but you need to let people know what the plan is, because in letting them know, it does boost morale and confidence, and it gives them empowerment, because they know if I stay on the path that I'm on now and I keep progressing the way that I am, potentially there's going to be an opportunity for me to step up to a higher level. So yeah, definitely don't make that mistake.
I think the other thing with that is that, potentially there's the opportunity to step up, because we know that there's a requirement for us to be fair and, have this equitable process around hiring and recruiting and that kind of thing. And that you don't want to give anyone unfair advantage over others. You want to be able to open that opportunity up. And so, you know, the flip side to that is I let you know that I think that you're the one that can fill in, and then you go through the recruitment process in a fair and equitable way and they don't get the role, is the disengagement.
And that's why I say potentially I obviously work in quality assurance, and we never say definitively that that's where the problem occurred. It's potentially and maybe and likely.
Yeah. Narelle, have you had situations where you've earmarked anyone? And
so I think in the companies, all of the companies that I've worked in, or the majority of them, you either have a view that you want to let people know and you want to develop them to give them the best possible opportunity should the opportunity arise. So you have really open, you know, there are a number of people, we want to develop you, fill your gaps. And then you have others where you're in a darkened room in a closed box and nobody knows quite what's happening, and you're making a whole range of assumptions that may or may not be accurate. And I think they're both approaches depending on which level of seniority you're looking at. I think from my personal perspective, I think putting people in a box without telling them and knowing what they need to develop is a waste of time and resources. So if I look at succession planning as I need a number of people who can potentially step into my role that may be from my team or elsewhere or even outside, I need to have an understanding of who they are, and my role is to help build them up and develop them. So if I think about my team at the moment, there's a range of people who could take on my role depending on how it's shaped, and they will have development plans in place and they will approach it from a different perspective to me. So I don't tend to go down to one single person. I tend to look at options and possibilities depending on what the role happens. But I take my role as, we see potential in you, we want to develop and grow you. You should probably know that.
So this is, I'm just going to put my sister hat on. Have you always done that? Because that's really annoying that you haven't, you know, made the mistake.
No, I think it is. I think you do. I think it depends on. I think it depends on the organization. So some organizations, some organizations will say that it's a confidential exercise that you go through. You should be developing your people, but you're not able to let them know. So I think in the roles that I'm in, you're guided by the organization and what's required, and some are more open and closed. So I don't think it's a mistake. I think people surprise you if you don't talk to them. So have I had people leave where you go, that's just absolutely someone we desperately needed? Yes. I haven't had single person dependencies where things have fallen over. And I think that's just the different nature of the work. You can always restructure and make things work and, you know, put the team in different places. I think where you have technical and critical capabilities, where there's single person dependencies, it's a lot higher risk. My role is a little bit different, not as quite as risky if you do that.
And do you think that comes down to your background or your pathway through your career has been through learning and development space, has been in the HR space, has been very much around that people centric versus, you know, I think about myself being operational. It's like you are in the pit. It is just like it's go, go, go. And that, you know, the development or the people growth development journey side of things is, well, for my experience, has kind of come secondary to just put the fires out, just get things done.
Yes. So yeah. I would say yes. So I think being in the area that I'm in, it is really hard to talk to managers and leaders about what to do if you're not doing it yourself. You can, but it's a little bit hypocritical. And so I think the approach that I've tended to take is people over process. And ensuring that you're taking them and more open rather than closed. So that's a preference. That tends to be the way that I operate, and that definitely comes through. I think if I talk to business leaders, that's completely different. It's something that you do as a process when you need to go through it. They may not always take a long-term approach to it, and they look at it really critically when they have a major issue or a resignation.
And thinking about, you know, critical issues in the quality space, Punky, has that been something that's informed your way of going? Like, are you similar to me with that operational background where it was, we're putting out fires, or are you?
Yeah, operational for sure. Like every day is completely different, and things can go pear-shaped very quickly. I also think in previous roles, there's team members that have been amazing, although not reliable at times, and that's when I first started thinking. I had an experience where we were going into audit situations, and the one person that I needed there just wasn't available, so I had to do everything myself. And I thought, going forward, at any other company I work at, I'm not going to let this happen, because it just takes too much toll on you as an individual to try and do two people's job at once.
Yeah, so interesting that, you know, when you're sort of in the daily grind, it can be an afterthought, and it can be something that you try to do and catch up on really quickly, and it does bite you in the backside, and you do end up putting yourself through unnecessary pain. But I definitely think that the approach, if you haven't experienced this already, as a listener, if you don't have an idea about succession planning, not just for yourself, but also for the other leaders and people in your team, then you're headed for, you know, some type of discomfort in the future, and you don't know when it's going to happen, and it's likely to happen when a whole lot of other stuff is happening at the same time.
Shell, I think I was just thinking another good tool that we used at one of our companies was the success profiles and career aspirations, and that's a good way of actually gauging who is interested in stepping up and what their 1, 2, and 5 year goals are. Because there has been times in the past where I have earmarked somebody and they're great at what they do, however, they have absolutely no intention whatsoever of going anywhere else other than what they already are. So I think that did save on a couple of awkward conversations of people saying, no, I don't want to do that. I'm happy where I am. You can kind of feel the waters before you have that conversation with them.
What do you think? How do you think the 1, 2, and not so much 1 and 2, but what do you think about 5 year goals, given the last 12 months that we've experienced? How does that fly? Have you kind of tried that on since COVID?
Look, I think I'm in a different, as you know, it was life as normal for me. Work was never busier. I was flat out. So 2020 has been so difficult for everyone else. And I've actually really haven't had a great deal of impact. So for me, 1, 2, and 5 year goals, and I know all the people within my company are the same, because we've all just worked the whole way through. So our goals in terms of what's happened this year haven't changed. Our travel plans probably have, but our goals haven't changed. So I think if my work situation was different and it had impacted me a lot more, I probably would be thinking a little bit shorter term rather than long term, but it hasn't affected me whatsoever. So I'm still thinking 1, 2, and 5 years ahead.
What about you, Rel? Are you finding 1, 2, and 5 works, or are you having to sort of bring it in to go, well, let's just deal with the next 6 months and then go out to maybe 2?
Yeah, so I think it depends. So we've got, and I think this would be representative of the outside world. We've got some businesses that are growing, and absolutely, this has been, you know, this hasn't, it's impacted them favorably. And we've got other businesses that have the different situations. So it depends. I think what I'm seeing is that you need to look at different horizons. So for some people, they'll have absolute clarity on what do I need to do, or what do I need to work on to be better at the role I'm doing now and to have a chance of promotion. So some people will be looking at, you know, next 3, 6, 12 months in the next cycle. Others will be going, I'm at a critical life stage and I'm wanting to put some planning in. I don't know what that role looks like, but I know where I want to be. I know the types of things I want to be doing, and I know the general direction that I want to go in, and then anywhere in between. So I think it is, yes, the business context has an impact on it, but I also think people are reconsidering, where am I based? What type of work am I doing? And starting to think longer term about, where am I living? What type of environment do I want to be in? Do I want to be stuck in a 3-bedroom house with no garden if this happens again? And so we've got a lot of people that are starting to look further out on, I may not know the roles I want to be doing, but I know how I want to be working, where I want to be based, and the types of things I want to be doing.
Gosh, that's really important, almost critical conversations to have with people, because your succession planning is going to be, it will need to be quite fluid. It will need to be quite agile in its own design, to allow for the changing expectations and, you know, career direction of your people.
Absolutely. And I think what this, in the team that I've got in our organization, things are changing radically. So one minute you're allowed into the UK, the next you're not. Australia's locked down, now it's not. So I think, you know, plans are great and you should have the conversations. You should have them really regularly. So I think at times of change and where things are really fluid and people's circumstances are changing quickly, you need to be having more regular conversations on where they're at and what's happening and what's important to them. Because I think over this year, that has changed more than I've seen in the last 3 years in a period of months.
Yeah, so important is that regular conversation. And for any of our listeners, if you're thinking about, you know, developing some succession planning, it's take the time to develop it, put something in place, but make sure it is a fluid document and constantly updated and assessed and evaluated, not something that's put on the shelf until things happen. So the ability for leaders to think strategically, to think big picture in, you know, this environment is really important. And I sometimes find that people struggle with big picture. Not everybody, but there are certain people that do struggle with big picture. And I have an idea around, you know, I have a strategy, and I'm keen to hear what strategies you have to kind of help people to really move between big picture and detail as they need to. But one of the things that I have played around with and even taught people to do is play the game of chess. And it's something that I'm working with the kids on. You know, Lewis is really good at chess. Actually, I can't beat him any longer. So I've stopped playing with him. That's my strategic approach. And I've turned to Riley, who's 9 and can't play. And Riley's very tactical, very one move at a time kind of thing. And so he'll move, and you just kind of eat his players up as they come towards you quite easily, because he's not thinking about the next move or how he's positioned himself. And so I've used chess as a way of teaching leaders how to think strategically and think a couple of moves ahead. But I'm keen to hear whether you've got any other strategies to help leaders really move between that big picture and detail quite fluidly. Sorry, unplanned question. Might put you on the spot there.
So I think, so I again use the horizon. So I think, you know, shorter term, so the work that I do is in support of the business. So where is the business going, and what are the things we absolutely have to get right now? And who are the people that I need to support that plan? So I'll go really quickly in there. But I think to get that broader horizon thing, you need to be comfortable thinking about options and possibilities and making some informed assumptions based on data and what that shows you. So I think where I see people struggling to go out to the big picture is when it's unknown, it's not certain, and they're having to make some choices, and they're trying to figure out the best way to do that. And the way that we tend to look at that is, you know, what's the data, what's the information, what are the inputs we need to make some, to form some options and to make some choices as we move forward. So I think for anyone who's trying to do long-term planning, if everyone could read the future, the stock markets, everyone investing in the stocks would be absolutely wealthy. You're making, you know, you're forming a hypothesis, you're trying to make the best decisions, and you need to course correct. It doesn't mean it's going to be right. So I think helping leaders to do that is important using horizons. I think to do the tactical, what I see people falling into the trap of is they have a strategy and they stick to it and they don't change it. And that is the strategy and that's the direction we go in. But what you need to be doing is developing that strategy with execution in mind. So what are the steps that I need to take? What are the things I need to do each week, each month with my team to make that happen? And then how does that change the outlook of that plan? So, you know, you need to be going backwards and forwards between them because the future is not certain and your daily work is going to change. And not everyone is great at all of those. So I think for leaders, surrounding yourself with people who are. So if you're not great at strategy, bring someone in to help workshop it, to work through that. If you're not great at execution in the detail, who do you have in your team who can help to do that? So I think as leaders at times we feel we have to do it all. So figure out what your approach is, who you need around you to do it, and you will need to balance them, but you may not have to be good at both.
That's great. That's excellent. So just constantly asking them questions to get their thinking, to shift their thinking with support. So Punky, being in the quality space, you would have to be going from big picture, you know, our accreditations, our, you know, that kind of certification kind of space. And then like, tell us what you do.
So if you get bogged down in the detail, you lose sight of the big picture very, very quickly. And I think, I don't know if I might be on the wrong track here, but I personally think it all just comes down to organization and time management and the person that has the vision to be heavily involved in what's going on. So to just give, you know, we get non-conformances in audits, or we don't most of the time because we're amazing, but say that we did, you know, the expectation is that there's a certain person that would step up and complete the non-conformances or the issues, whereas I tend to get heavily involved in it. And, you know, I'll assist with creating a timeline and setting expectations and saying this is when I want it done by, and I'll check in regularly. I'm very old school. I actually write down a list on the massive whiteboard in my office because I find that we have 21 audits a year, and there's a lot of prep that goes into that, and some of them are 3 days long, 5 days long even. It's a massive amount of work, and it just does become completely overwhelming. So I think I've made my team pretty clear of my expectations. So with every audit that we have, I set a 2-week timeline, which is quite tight, but everything must be done within that 2 weeks. And initially they weren't on board with it and they complained. And I said, look at the bigger picture. You get that out of the way. You can focus on our day-to-day work, and then we can start prepping for the next audit. You don't want to be going into another audit with non-conformances hanging over your head. It's like not doing the housework, or, you know, just having that one thing that's playing on your mind that I haven't done and I can't think of anything else. So for me, I don't think that is micromanaging. It's more just heavily supporting and making it clear that, yeah, we've got a lot of work to do, but once that's out of the way, then we can kind of breathe a little bit easier, and it'll always make the next upcoming task or upcoming audit a whole lot easier if we streamline our systems and use the recommendations that the auditors have given us.
I love
Kristy,
that.
Oh, so do I. And I was just going to build on it. I think the team disciplines in and around, you need perspective and you need to know where you're going, but those team disciplines, which is how you're managing your days and your weeks and switching between that, not losing sight of where you're going. And Kristy, you're absolutely right on time management and personal effectiveness. You need to nail that to be able to, you know, get the work that you need to get done in the right sequence and priority. So I absolutely agree. It's fundamental.
Thanks, Rel. And they didn't actually agree in the beginning. So this is a very hard shift to make. Initially, it was just like, oh man, she expects way too much from us. You know, she's a perfectionist. She's working us really hard. And it was funny because after the first few audits that we'd done, they got their weekends back. And I said, why are you working weekends? They were all working weekends. And it was because they didn't get the work done during the day. They just needed to shift the way that they were doing things. Because I made the point that I've got children and I'm not working weekends if I work really hard during the week. You should not have to ever work a weekend if you're working really hard during the week. And they've embraced it and they absolutely love it now because none of them are doing that.
Gosh, that's so good. And I even love the bigger picture of, would you like your weekends back?
Yes. Yeah. That's a massive driver. And you know, and they all commented, my God, we've got our weekends back. Like my husband said, what are you doing? You're not on the computer. And I said, you don't have to be. As you know, you work, you know, smarter, not harder. But I think you also need a key motivator and a driver and someone to constantly remind them of the bigger picture and the benefits of doing it this way.
Yeah.
I was just going to say on that, you know, so if I think about my team, we've got a lot of creative and relationship focused people who like to innovate and, you know, bring new things out to our client groups. And so on the opposite side of that, Kristy, like you've gone through, is to be able to free you up to have the space to do the fun stuff and the interesting stuff. We need to get the disciplines right and the structures around it So it creates time for us to do some of that work. And so I think there's this sort of myth that you can't, if you want to be creative, it's all free flowing and there's no boundaries and we just do it as it comes in. And it's like, yeah, and you're going to waste an epic amount of time. You're not going to get the core work done. So bring the discipline in to free up space elsewhere to do more of that stuff.
Exactly. I think the other thing is too, if you're willing to get involved and do a lot of the hard work yourself as well, when you're trying to demonstrate what the bigger picture is and the vision is, they get on board a lot more because they're like, oh, she's doing it as well. Like, you're not just giving it to us and saying, this is what I want, get it done. You're actually getting heavily involved with it and helping us and assisting us where we need it.
Yeah, working as hard as your team.
Yeah, and it brings integrity into it. She's doing what she's saying and walking the talk. So much gold in this conversation. I'm hearing that it's about setting horizons and being able to share with people, what's the future look like, and encouraging them and not limiting your talent pool, I guess, to any one particular person. So you're not putting yourself at risk of, them leaving and ruining your whole plan. I'm hearing people getting their holiday time and being able to actually go on a break from work and not have to think about it and not have their phone on, not have the computer on. And, that's amazing if you can achieve that, and you really do see the benefits. They'll give all of that back, and even just getting their weekends back. So much value in this conversation. I think what I'm hearing, and I'd love you to kind of summarize any points that I miss, is succession planning requires planning from the beginning. And so it's early planning. It's not done reactively. It is best done proactively. It is having conversations with people openly about possible opportunities and things that might come up in the future, but also broadening that out to a lot of people. And it's about organization and time management and making sure that you've got the time to actually settle into this and not react, but be really proactive. But anything that I've missed there around summarizing? I think it's such great points.
No, I think you've summarized it very well. I think just, I don't know if this is on the right track, but just having regular conversations with your team members and asking them what they want and checking in. And if you do feel like their work is changing, the way they're doing things is changing, just have a conversation with them. What's happening with you? How are you feeling? And sometimes it is, I'm just overwhelmed by all the work and the audits that we've got going. And then I always just get into the excitement mode and say, let's get excited, because once this is done and once we've made the changes that we need to make, and the processes, every day becomes audit day, and the work isn't as hard, but we have to just get in there and get it done and get excited about the whole process. And it's a journey, and looking at a system that was there that wasn't working and creating it and turning it into something new, where, as you both know, I've done that 100 times before, looking at something that was completely defunct and didn't work and taking it to something that's amazing and getting a AAA rating is the greatest satisfaction of all. And if you can get everyone else on the team excited about that, I think that the succession planning thing will come along with it. They'll decide, I can actually do what she's doing. I've walked most of the path with her, and now I think I could actually step up and take over your role when you leave. And I think the other thing is, just quickly, I had a conversation with one of my team members and I asked what their career goal was, and they said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, don't you want to become QA manager? And the person actually said to me, no, but then I'd be taking your job. And I said, why is that a problem? And she was like, well, you don't want me to take your job. I said, yes, I do. Like, I actually do. So when you're ready, I want you to take my job, because I'm going to step up and take someone else's job. Everyone is going to move up the ladder, and to know that there's someone that's wanting to take my job is a testament to me as a manager, and the fact that they are wanting to go that step further because of the motivation and the drive that I have had a hand in giving to them.
And it may not be up the ladder, it might be across the roof.
Absolutely. Yeah, into another area. That's right.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I love that. Rel, anything from you? Final comments.
Final comments. So I think when you hear the word succession, you go, oh, what does that mean? And how do I do it properly? And should I be doing it? And I think sometimes we leave these processes to HR people and more senior people. And so the advice I'd have for managers is, if you run a team and you have people in it, you need to be thinking about succession. It's as simple as that. Right people in the right roles, doing the right thing at the right time. You need to have that. Otherwise, you're not managing. So if you're a manager with a team of people, you need to be thinking about this stuff. Don't wait for HR or someone else to talk to you about it. If you are bringing in really smart people who can start to push up and are potential people to either replace you or others in the organization, give them the space to grow and let go. So if you don't give them the space to grow into, and you don't let go of what your role is and give them the opportunity, you will end up with really frustrated people who are not going anywhere. So I think, if you bring people in, you've got an obligation and responsibility to give them space to grow. And then the other piece is, when you're thinking about the people who can be in your team, don't just look at your team. Look across the organization, look at different people outside, think about who can come in, and then also think about, they might step up in your team, but they might also go somewhere else as well. And so I think part of your role as a manager is looking at broad people. So if I think about my team, they've come from all different industries, all different markets, different parts of the organization, some out of business roles, some out of HR roles. And they've all got the space to either go into my role or other roles as well. And so it gives people a lot more space to play if you start thinking more broadly around it as well. And you end up with a more diverse team as well as you go through. So succession is long-term in a short-term world. Don't think about it when you need it. You need to be planning a lot longer out.
Great. And I love that. Be broad.
Hey, Shell, I've got one other thing. Sorry. I'm just thinking, from a QA background, we always have to have contingency plans in place. And I know there's succession planning, but I also think, I'm just thinking, for example, a small company, a plumber, and he's got one worker. I think they need to think about contingency planning, because if that person leaves, there's actually no succession. So you need to be thinking of, well, say, for example, he has a car accident tomorrow, what is going to happen? So I think, like Narelle said, if you're a team or a business owner or anyone in that respect that has another person working with them, you need to have a plan in place, whether it's succession or contingency, to make sure that you're covered.
That is such a great point. And, as someone who is the owner and operator of my business, I am all of that. And so
I was talking about you, Shelley.
Yeah, I'm the plumber with so you'll be pleased to know that I have actually thought about that, and I make sure that I operate my business on this theory of abundance, and that if people want to work with me, then they'll work with me. If they want to work with someone else, that's also awesome. But in the event that I'm not available, I actually have a really great network of people who do similar things to what I do, and I'm not afraid of them taking any work from me at all. I love the idea that if I was unable to fulfill a commitment that I have made, that I could reach out to a handful of people and say, hey, can you pick this up? And that, I've got confidence that they're able to do that for me. So I love that. It's definitely around, contingency planning as well. Good chat. Great conversation, sisters. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Always fabulous.
Thanks so much for joining me, and I'd love you to come back and join again. I love the diversity of our conversations and the different experiences and insights that come. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to having another chat soon.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to all our listeners. We will be back with another episode of The Dynamic Leader next week. So stay tuned.